All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Why Influence podcast. Today we got an amazing guest. His name is Austin Stevens. He's from Opal Group, which is a group that puts together a lot of conferences, and they've been migrating a lot of efforts into virtual conferences recently. And Austin has been sort of at the forefront within the company, helping drive these virtual conferences where people can actually walk around virtually through a space, set up conference rooms, and be on Zoom calls, but also in that space in person in the computer. He showed me a demo of the software. It's very impressive. Anyway, he's a virtual conference consultant and he's an expert. So he's an expert at virtual conferences. It's a big thing right now. He's been doing conferences forever, and he's got a ton of experience with it. And with all that experience combined with the know-how of all the virtual conferences that he's been working on, is very valuable information that a lot of people out there would be interested in hearing. So I hope this is valuable for you. Anyway, Austin, I appreciate you taking the time today to come on here.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Cool. So can you just tell me real briefly, what the work is that you do and what you're all about?
Yeah, so for the past, I'd say 6 or 7 years, I've been in the events industry, right? So I've been hosting events more for enterprise organizations. So really bringing, what you would find at a typical conference, kind of what that would bring, right? What's the format? Is it a trade show? Is it an expo? I specialize in more of the one-to-one meeting style format where I like to call broker events, right? Where we're actually taking the solution providers or sponsors and connecting them with the end users. So it's been great. I love the events industry. I love being that kind of guy that can be the one that connects the dots to create new business for other companies through this format. At Opal Group, obviously we do events and we specialize in the HR space. So a lot of events around chief human resource officers, heads of learning and development, talent acquisition, diversity and inclusion. But as we all know, coronavirus happened, right? So what do you do? How do you replicate a live event that has an engaging aspect, right? That has the ability to foster relationships, to really bring forth what you want as a company. Say if you're sponsoring it, you want to get brand recognition, you want to get brand awareness, you want to get that shock and awe, which in turn will lead to more leads and new clients. And how do you do that, right, without doing another Zoom, right? There's tons of them out there. So really, Jeremy, what I wanted to do was create a world that was immersive. So I don't know if anybody's played the Sims. We played the Sims before.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah. Okay. That's a good analogy, right? So think the Sims or World of Warcraft, right? And
Or
really
a second life kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was create a world that was very easy for anyone to get around in. It doesn't matter your skill level. You don't need a joystick or anything. Something very simple. So I wanted to create an atmosphere that replicated a live event, and at the same time packed a punch, right? Delivered content, delivered brand awareness. I wanted to create a platform where, that really brought forth knowledge transfer, but something everybody can talk about 3 years down the line, right? I wanted everybody to say, hey, I went to this conference, I found my vendor there that really helped me scale up XYZ company, and we had avatars and all of this, right? And that is what brings in the goal, right? The objective. Yeah. The platform that I use is called LearnBright. So it's actually a learning and development platform meant for simulations that I've actually helped pivot into a event space, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, it's very impressive software. I saw some of the work that you put in there. But can you maybe share real quick just like a recent win that you've had? Because Opal Group's been doing conferences for a long time, always generally in person. And now, like because of COVID, you've had to make this giant pivot. And I know that you've been, stepping up and bringing a lot of value there. So maybe can you just maybe explain just like a quick, high value win that recently happened that you were part of?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know where to begin. I mean, we do an event every month now, right? So I think just being able to come back from my honeymoon, March 13th. And all hell was breaking loose, man. Right? I mean, people were hoarding toilet paper. That was like gold. and everybody's like, well, what do we do with business? Hospitality got the biggest hit. So I wanted to really create this space. And again, I didn't build the platform. Learn Bright is the bread and butter of the blueprint, but I took my experience of what I know from the conference world, right? What works? What do people, what do companies want to see? What's the objective? And just molded it together with some blood, sweat, and tears. But I think my success was really just getting that first event off the ground, right? Spending a week to 2 weeks building it out, which is nice because once you build it, you can replicate it. So now all we're doing now is really just flipping signs and flipping spaces, but in the virtual world, I can actually clone it. So if you're a conference company or you're a business, right, that's used to hosting conferences, like you don't have to buy the venue anymore. You don't have to buy the food and beverage. You don't have to buy the rooms, right? And you have unlimited amount of space because all you have to do is clone it. So success is really just getting this off the ground, and I would say differentiating it. There's a lot of Zooms, there's a lot of great companies out there in the VR space. Don't get me wrong, and I think each one has its own unique niche, and I think it really depends on what your mission is, right? What are you looking for,
Right.
And that's going to determine what platform you use as well.
Awesome. Well, congrats on the progress you've made so far with everything. It's pretty amazing.
Thanks.
So a lot of people who are listening here are either influencers or aspiring influencers. So they're generally putting together communities around something that they're passionate about. So let's talk a little bit about how they could utilize virtual conferences with what they do. So let's say you've got somebody with just a community, a niche community. What would be some of the first steps that they could take to going from taking that community to having some kind of virtual conference presence, for an influencer standpoint?
Yeah, I would say look at your mission. Like, what do you want to get out of it, right? Do you want more followers? Do you want to make revenue? Do you want to create a business, right? There's a million different things you can use an event space for. And just for example, so say you're a nonprofit, right? You're used to hosting events all the time, and maybe you have members, maybe you have schools, right? You need to host events, right? You're used to having people together. You can't do it in a classroom. You can't do it at a Starbucks anymore. You just can't sit down and do it. So how do you replicate engagement, right? How do you replicate knowledge transfer, right? Storytelling. I mean, we all know storytelling is the most impactful thing there is, but how do you replicate that, right? You can have a phone call, but there's so much more when you can see the person's face. You can get that linguistics, right? You can get that tone put
Right.
into that conversation. So when you're creating a community, you want to figure out, hey, what do I want to do first, right? Is it just to deliver content, and build my followers? Great. Okay, well then what do I do after that? I got to get speakers. You have to get your marketing materials in place. So then that way you can, in turn, get more speakers, more attendees, more interest. And then the bigger the punch, the more followers you're going to have, So if you're yeah, go ahead.
So that's interesting. The first thing to do is really clearly define your why for the conference. Figure out why you're doing this conference, what's so important about it, what value are the conference attendees going to get, and just sit down and define all that out. And then once you have that, then the next step would be to start figure out the things to execute on.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely your why is important, right? If you want to make revenue, right, how do you find sponsors, right? What platform are you going to use to really engage those who are going to say, hey, well, my money's tied up right now.
Right.
Why would I choose you? Right?
So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's it. There you go.
Oh, okay. So let's say somebody has a smaller community, somewhere between 20 and 50 people. Smaller in-person community they want to just host an event for. What kind of platform would they be looking at for hosting something like that? And then maybe we can talk about as it gets larger, what kind of where the platforms sort of evolve and change as the size or impact goes with it.
Yeah. So, I think it comes down to, do you want to run more of a webinar where you're presenting and the others are or just listening, or do you want to get more engaged, right? I mean, there's companies like Remo, based out of China, that literally has a cafeteria, right, where you can click on different tables and you jump around from cafeteria to table to table, and you and I can actually see each other and talk. But you can go all the way up to companies like LearnBright, right? Companies like LearnBright that have a 3D immersive atmosphere. You can actually create a virtual classroom. I can create a virtual round table. I can create a conference table. I can go as big or as small as we need to be. So in your instance, if you want to scale, I would say go for a company that has both short-term and long-term mindset, objectives in play, and then choose the platform that can deliver both, right? A lot of platforms will have a limit to where you can only have so many users. LearnBright's nice because Danny, the CEO there, he basically designed it to create another instance. So just as any multiplayer game out there, there's different servers that you're on. It's the same thing, but now you can pipe in the same content to everybody. So getting the engagement, being able to go from 5 people to 1,000 people is achievable, right? And you don't have to be a tech genius to get around the world either.
Right. Makes sense. So, what you've got quite a bit of experience in the space. Like, what are some of the common mistakes that you see people do? Like, if they're trying to do a virtual event, like what are some common things that you see that you're like, oh man, they could have done this better, or maybe you've experienced and been like, I wish I'd done it this way, like through the process.
So I'm a big tech guy, and I love technology. So I'm a firm believer of break it, try to break it. A lot of people will buy anything just because it sounds good, right? Or they read the description, that's what I want, or they read the reviews. Always ask for a pilot or try it, test it out, do a demo, have your questions ready to ask the person that's going to help you, because that's only going to make your experience better, right? I'm happy to help anybody that reaches out to me that wants to explore it, right? And say, hey, Austin, I'm thinking about this. Would love your ideas and your mind. What do you think I should do? I would tell you, right? I would say, hey, well, what's your objective, right? Here's the platform. Now I'm going to give it to you, and now you have to break it. And then you come to me and tell me, hey, why doesn't this work the way I want it to? Or
That's
how
a
do
good
I
point.
do this, right? Because the more skilled you get at building the world yourself, the more money you're going to save. The more skilled you get at building your processes out and organizing things, the faster you're going to run. Right?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, what I got there is, try to find the limits of the software that's stopping you from what you're trying to do. So, like, if you say, hey, let's try this platform, and you start using it, and it's like, okay, well, I wish it did this, and now you're seeing it has these limiting factors for your purpose. Now it's time to sort of see what other alternatives that are out there that can solve what you already need and then what you're missing, and just just get in there, test things, and pilot the products to see what works for your specific need.
Yeah, and that's also going to tell you what your overhead's going to look like. So you may need to staff somebody else to run XYZ portion. You may need someone to just host that event altogether, and that's all you need. Maybe you need someone like a producer to write the agenda. If I've learned anything, is that the pandemic that we're in has really affected a lot of people and a lot of executives, and it doesn't matter what role you're in. I think most are wearing multiple hats now, and you have to. But at the same time, as we start to see light at the end of the tunnel, which fingers crossed is sooner than later, are you ready? Right. And I think getting immersed in a space and getting your processes and trying to break it and testing those limitations around your why, that's going to give you your answer at the end.
Okay. And I mean, as you mentioned Zoom earlier, is Zoom something that people are using for virtual conferences? Or do you suggest swaying away from that? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Zoom's here to stay. I mean, their stock's been killing it. I know that, right? During this whole thing, and they also had some bad news too, right? I mean, they were getting hacked for a while, so they changed their password, procedure. There's no more free account, so you can't dial in using a handset unless you have a paid account. So depends what level you're at, right? If you can afford to do Zoom, cool. And if that you like that, cool. Do you? right? Find what's gonna vibe with your objective, your goal, and your personality, and what you want to happen, right? Not everybody wants a virtual world you can walk around in. That's fine. I wanted something that was really different, right?
Yeah.
Something that would kind of make jaws drop rather than just your normal Zoom. And I always just say Zoom because it's easy to say, but there's WebEx, there's just,
Right.
there's tons of them out there, right? GoToMeeting. It all have their limitations as well. I do like how Zoom has breakout rooms as well. I haven't tested it too much, but we use Zoom for webinars. They're still good for hour-long content. But if you want to get engaging, you know, engaging aspects like moving around, say having an avatar dance to draw attraction into a booth, something you can't do anymore. Here, that's a platform to use.
Right. Speaking on that, let's talk a little bit about LearnBright because that's what you've been diving into. I know that you showed me that you can have the exhibit hall, so you got actual booths with people standing there, and so someone is on the other, like on their computer, who's running the booth that's standing there, and then they can interact with people as they walk up. And then there's it's main speaking stage. It's designed just like a real conference where you can walk around and go to these different places. But you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as soon as I have it set up. So when you log in, you jump right in the auditorium. So you're right in front of like kind of a mock registration booth, right? Where it also has a tutorial video built in that I made. Again, Danny's team at LearnBright has been stellar. And then, my team at Opal Group has been stellar, really helping pivot and put all the pieces together to make it look great. The ability to be able to move your avatar around, enter a dance move. I mean, that's something you see in YouTube videos and gamers. And if you have kids, maybe your kids play games like Fortnite where they're dancing, that is something everybody knows, right? It's familiar. So when you take something that's familiar and you blend it with a concept that you're interested in, say L&D, right? And you're at a conference with 50 enterprise heads of L&D, and you see this avatar dancing. Well, you want to know how to do that. So what's that buyer going to do? Hey, seller, sponsor, how did you dance, right? So from an objective there, we have a seller, a sponsor saying, hey, look at me, I'm dancing. You don't know how to do that yet, but I can tell you. But then what do we talk about early on in the conversation? 3 years down the line, that's what they're going to talk about. Right? They're going to say, hey, I met my vendor. He started dancing in this virtual world, and that's how I met him. That's how I started doing business. That's how he saved my career, right? That vendor saved me because their platform allowed me to get rid of 4 of my employees, and I was already running thin, but I still got the job done.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So what about the breakout rooms? 'Cause I thought that was pretty impressive too.
Yes, the breakout rooms. So what's really unique is just like we're having a conversation here, you can have your avatar on the couch in your own office and have the same engagement. So I've set it up to where, like our live events, we have the broker style, the prearranged one-on-one meetings. Well, we can do the same thing, right? Everybody has an agenda, it's personalized, and in the world, you can very easily move to an office of, say, XYZ company, and then boom, we're sharing our camera where we can actually see each other. We're getting that engaging aspect rather than just a phone call, and it's like we're in person, right? We can't actually handshake, but I can wave to you, as an avatar.
Yeah, and what I saw is that on the wall was a giant, let's say, projector screen that had the actual screen of the Zoom call. So you'll have both people there on the wall, but then you're actually seeing from the perspective of the avatar where you're sitting on the couch. So that when you look at the wall, you see each other on the webcam talking, but you can look over at the other avatar and see the avatar sitting there or walking around, waving and things.
Yeah, so what's really cool is it's actually in LearnBright you can toggle between first person and third person. So, for instance, in the keynote room, I have it set up for first person because you don't want to get other people's heads, in front of you. It's no fun sitting in the movie theater, right, and having a big head in front of you, which I don't think they even have anymore because stadium seating took over, right? But I think I think having first person, third person, I think that goes back to what platform is best for you, right? Having third person in the one-to-one room is set up that way so you can see the actions, right? If you go to the lobby or the expo, that's third person as well, right? So it gives you that different mindset. But the goal also, Jeremy, was software fatigue. The goal was to eliminate that, right? So having the ability to freely look around a world in a 300.
Oh, looks like we lost Austin here, so let's give it a minute for him to come back. But I mean, nonetheless, it's pretty impressive, the conferences that he's put together. I mean, it's in this virtual world. You get to walk around and like really interact just like a real conference. And I think that's what is really impressive about this LearnBright software. And Austin's been diving deep in that. Sounds like he's been working closely with the CEO there. And I hope Austin comes back because I wanted to ask him some questions about like common mistakes for larger conferences or existing conferences, or people that are migrating an existing conference into a virtual conference. So let's give it a moment here. I'm going to put us on hold and hope that Austin shows up here shortly. Hey, Austin, are you back? Can you hear me, Austin? I can't hear you. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties here. But I mean, what it sounds like is you've got to really focus down onto what your goals are at the conference, and then find the softwares that fit the needs of what you're trying to do with the conference. So if you just have a small community and you want to use Zoom, you can do breakout sessions, do something on the smaller scale, and that's even scalable to a certain extent. That's one way, but I like what Austin said about the fatigue that comes with using a Zoom and just looking at a standard screen as opposed to walking around an environment. People can play video games all day and not get the fatigue, but staring at a Zoom call all day, you'll definitely get fatigue from that. Austin, is there a way to change your sound?
Ooh.
Yeah, you got it.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. Camera's a little fuzzier, but it's backup camera.
Yeah, no, this is fine. I'm glad we're back up.
Cool. Yeah, the camera's not. It's an old laptop camera, so it's not as good as the old iPhone 11.
Yeah, you're good. All right, so we've been talking a lot about LearnBright and the different softwares people can use. Do you mind sharing some, people that already have conferences, maybe they've been doing a conference for a couple of years now, and, they've had issues where they've had to cancel a conference, or maybe there's ways to, keep the, community engaged while the conference is not going on. What are some common mistakes that you see that in that world, like the established conferences? What kind of optimization are they missing out on by not really tackling the virtual conferences appropriately?
Good question. I've worked. I know a bunch of different companies out there, and I've got friends that work at various conference companies, and everybody runs things differently. I think that's one thing to note. And I think you have to look at where you're at in your company to say, okay, well, do I go virtual, and how big do I go? Right? There's some virtual platforms out there that, from the investment standpoint, can be quite steep. $100,000, right? I mean, that's a good chunk of change if you're not going to get that return for the event that you're used to hosting live, right? So you just got to make sure, hey, is that something you want to do? If you want to do something on a lean level, or a one-off event, right? Find the platform that's right for you. Some of the mistakes, out there are just not delivering, right? Trying to do it too quick. I think that's a big mistake. Also, is trying to say, hey, how quick can we do these events just to replace what we had already established? It's yes and no, right? But it's kind of at the right pace, and I think we're all also learning as we go too, right? So it's kind of a day by day, week by week situation right now. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's
No, yeah.
hard one.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, so where I'm getting at is when you went out to a conference, you really got dive deep into the why, the purpose, what's the conference goals, things like that. And then once you have that, you got to dive deep into the platforms because there's so many different options out there, and you got to see what works best for you. But those seem like those are the two big things that keep coming up as the most important to focus on. Because if you have, that purpose really drilled in right, and you find the platform that works perfect for that, then you just have that base that's set up to set you up for success for the whole conference.
Yeah, you nailed it, man.
All right,
It's an interesting world we're in.
yeah, awesome. Well, do you have anything else that you'd like to talk about in regards to what people can do to starting conferences, or anywhere we're missing that we didn't dive into that you think we should?
I mean, I would say, trade the trend, right? That's kind of a lingo I go by all the time. And that is, look at the environment we're in, look at who you want to reach, look to see if events are the thing you want to do, right? Or pivot just digital. Maybe you do more SEO, SEM. But in my opinion, doing something like a virtual event is going to add a strong differentiator to what you're already doing digitally. Should add a little bit more of that punch, right? Make sure it's different. Make sure you're doing something engaging. Happy to have a conversation with anybody out there that wants some more insight on virtual world, LearnBright, Opal Group, how we can come in and help, how I can come in and help. I mean, really, it's kind of we're in a situation now where it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I think we need to build a community together, just to help see light at the end of the tunnel, right? And then we form some really good relationships for growth later on. Yeah,
and it sounds like you might have a conference on how to do conferences somewhere in your pipeline.
Hey, there we go. That'd be cool, right?
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you're listening here and you find that you're looking to do a virtual conference or learn more about it, then definitely reach out to Austin. He's a very open person, very easy to get a hold of. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
I would say I'm on LinkedIn. You can just type in Austin Stevens Tampa. I'll be the first hit on Google pretty much all the time. And I'm also connected with Jeremy, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and for taking the time to dive deep into virtual conferences. Sometime in the future, I would love to maybe have a follow up on this, and we can go deeper into this as you get further in your journey of doing these virtual conferences. Because I don't see that progress and path slowing down for you from what we've talked about.
Yeah. If anything, it's going to become more of a hybrid. So I think that next conversation is going to be how do you cater to those that are staying at home and those that are going out, and still making an impact. And I think that's where we're headed. I'm still trying to figure it all out myself, but we're almost there, I think.
Nice. Hopefully. Yeah. Well, once we get there, let's have another conversation. I'd love to talk about that.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy.
All right. Thanks, Austin. And thank you for taking time to listen in today. I hope that Austin gave you a lot of value. If you did, just feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn, send him a message and just say, hey, I got value, if you got any value. Otherwise, if you want to learn more about what Austin does or how he can help you, or just have a brainstorm session with him, let him know that too. He's always looking for people to help. So he'd love to help you out with your project if you're looking to take your current conference and find a way to take it virtual or start a conference from a community that you have. So feel free to, connect with Austin there. And I'm going to have links to his LinkedIn and all his social medias on my website show notes. So once we have this published on the podcast and it's on the website, you can just go to the winefluence.com website and then connect with Austin through that as well.